AITA for telling my wife we're not going to contribute our fair share toward her parents' assisted living expenses. Origin post. This entire situation has completely spiraled out of control, with constant arguing, and I've ended up sleeping in the guest bedroom. My wife's parents have reached the stage where they need assisted living, and her siblings collectively decided that this was the best option. They spent time researching different facilities, but I didn't participate, assuming that the 5 adult siblings could handle it, especially as I've never been particularly close to my in-laws. They eventually found a facility they felt was perfect, and my wife was thrilled when she told me about it. However, my reaction was less than enthusiastic when I learned that our share of the cost would be around $3,000 upfront and $5,000 monthly. My immediate response was to question why the facility required a $15,000 upfront fee and $25,000 a month for 2 people. Admittedly, I sarcastically asked if the apartment was next to Elon Musk's parents. My wife explained that because we earn more than her siblings, we would be covering the bulk of the costs. This marked the beginning of a week filled with texts, phone calls, and in-person arguments. She argued that her siblings make significantly less than we do, with some being single, which would impact them more, so it's only fair for us to pay more. She also pointed out that the facility is mid-tier, with good safety ratings. According to her, cheaper options have poor ratings and could jeopardize her parents' safety. My perspective is that there are 5 siblings, so the costs should be split equally among them. I also argued that if the combined incomes of 5 people couldn't cover this facility, perhaps it would be better to consider a more affordable option. This led to a long, circular debate about cost versus safety, and eventually I snapped and yelled, "It's not that we make more than your siblings. I make more than all of you, and that's why you all want me to cover the costs for your parents." That comment was the start of my nights in the guest room. While I understand that as a married couple, finances are usually shared, I also feel it's unfair for me to carry the largest burden simply because I happen to earn more. What are your thoughts on this? Update: I wanted to address a few questions. 1. Initially, I thought the facility cost was around $25,000 per month, based on the assumption that it would be split 5 ways among the siblings, which would make our contribution $5,000 per month. As it turns out, the actual cost is closer to $10,000 per month, but we're still responsible for paying $5,000 of that. 2. Her parents have assets, including a house, which means they don't qualify for government assistance. I suggested selling the house to help cover the costs, but her siblings immediately rejected the idea. They want to keep it in the family, citing sentimental reasons as it was built by their great-grandfather. While I can afford the payments, I feel it's unfair on principle. Under their division plan, I'll be paying $5,000 a month, while the youngest sibling, who will also live in the family home, will only pay $300 monthly, as they argue he's responsible for insurance and taxes on the house. Another update: 4. I'm an only child, and my parents carefully planned their retirement after putting me through multiple degrees. I know that when their time comes, I'll be solely responsible for making sure they're comfortable. 5. Following a suggestion, I asked my wife if, since we're contributing this much to her parents, her family would do the same for mine when the time comes. Her response was, "Don't be ridiculous, that's a totally different situation." 6. I don't want ownership of their house, as it's old and in need of serious repairs. I raised the idea of selling it again, but it was shut down immediately. They refused to consider it. 7. None of us fully understand the laws and regulations regarding this situation, so I finally got my wife to agree to consult with an estate attorney to clarify our responsibilities. 8. I don't know if I'll continue updating, as this entire situation has left me feeling emotionally exhausted. I always knew my parents would eventually need support, but I didn't expect the process to be this draining. Either that, or pay for a live-in carer. If that doesn't work, they have no choice but to sell the property. No reason for them to assume OP should be financially responsible for their parents. Why doesn't the brother who will be living in the house, who can't afford more than $300, become the carer? I bet he would do it for less than $10 a month. In all fairness, depending on what the health of the parents is like, he might not be qualified to take care of them. For instance, when my Nana's dementia had progressed to a certain point, my mother and aunts and uncles who had been alternating her care amongst the family suddenly found themselves at a loss as she became unable to do more things. But also she became emotionally and even physically abusive to them, no longer able to understand what was happening to her and why. So, it highly depends on their conditions whether or not a regular person can adequately care for them. Exactly right. I was my mom's caretaker, and it was hard. Once her needs exceeded my skills, we found her a place, and I got to go back to being her daughter. Much better. Yeah, she's not my mom anymore. She's just a person that lives in my house. She used to hit my dad when he was sick, because she was so confused about why he was sick. I told her if she laid another hand on him, I'd break it. She used to beat me too when I was little, and when I got bigger than her, I said the same thing. This disease is a curse, but I'm an empathetic and compassionate person, thanks to my dad teaching me how to be a good person. So I take the good with the bad. She doesn't know what she's doing anymore, and I can't fault her for being confused. I'm glad you're doing better with yours. Damn, I am 33 and about to start caring for my 74-year-old mother that has cancer and signs of dementia. Tibia, it's not fair. I should have another 10 years to get my life together before I have to take care of my parents. I have never felt resentful for being born to parents in their 40s until now. If he is unable to care for a couple who require assisted living, then they need more than assisted living. There are retirement villages for older people who want to downsize. Assisted living is minimal help, maybe cook a meal, medication reminders, making sure they clean themselves. If he can't do that, then those folks need to go to a care home. I work in healthcare as a support worker. If they qualify for assisted living, then the brother for this. I am healthcare too. Assisted living is basically having someone clean up a little after you and have food made if you don't want to cook. They do not do your meds. They do not take you to your Docker apps. They do not care for dirty diapers. They do not help you shower. If they need more help, freeloading brother should be doing it. Do some laundry, make some food, help clean up for them. Then, if he does this, he gets a bigger share of the inheritance. If don't, well, comparable to what a live-in would cost. I agree. My grandmother had early onset Alzheimer's, which progressed rapidly, and there was an incident where it became apparent she could no longer be left alone at all. So my grandfather had to retire to be her full-time caregiver. Within a few years, I was young enough that I don't remember exact details, she was unable to physically care for herself and could no longer leave the house. If their parents are in similar conditions, it's unlikely the youngest sibling would be able to give up working to care 24/7, nor should they have to. Another solution would be better. Yep, in-home care is frequently far less expensive, especially if only one person is needed to care for both people. And this will only become more true if they have memory issues in the future and need a higher level of care. It also doesn't put them through the stress of leaving their familiar environment. Yeah, that assisted living costs a lot of money. I've been a carer for elderly family members living in their houses twice. Even an extra $1,000 a month to help pay for a bit of respite once in a while and other help would have been immense. I can't imagine needing $10,000 a month if they were living at home. There's no doubt it would be cheaper to have them stay in the home. The parents sell the house and live off the assets until used up, then the family kick in. Unless you're guaranteed that house or proceeds from sale, this is ludicrous. This right here. If they want to keep the house in the family, the siblings can buy it. Otherwise, OP is really just subsidizing the house, effectively at a market value of around $800, $5,000 month mortgage plus taxes. Yeah, no way one sibling gets to all but inherit the family home, living there rent-free indefinitely, paying just the taxes and utilities, and then claim that because of that burden, i.e. gift, he should barely have to pay anything towards his parents' care. If the siblings want the house to stay in the family, I see only two reasonable options. OP buys the house and the proceeds go towards the parents' care. he could rent it out to the brother, or the other siblings come up with a plan to buy it. Major financial decisions like this need to be a yes from both spouses, with advance notice and input throughout the decision-making process. I am still bowled away by. I brought up the idea of selling their house but was shot down immediately. The siblings want to keep the house in the family because their great-grandfather built it or something. Mom can't spend her money, the value of the house, because we want to inherit it, but she can sure spend OPs. That's how I read it. They want the house, free and clear. They will either sell it or one will live in it, like the single sibling is doing and only paying $300 per month to the parents' support, right? Also, they don't have to risk any of their parents' assets in this endeavor. This is all clearly a gambit to get OP to subsidize them having an inheritance from their parents. If I were OP, I'd tell my wife that if we have to pay the lion's share, it'll be after all of her parents' assets have been liquidated and used to pay for the facility. If everyone only chips in $300, they won't be able to afford to do anything for the parents. This stuff is insanely expensive. They need to sell that house. This side scheme to let a younger brother live in a house sounds like they're just trying to find ways to take advantage of their parents. If the great-grandfather built it, finding a way to keep it in the family makes sense. Renting it, or having a sibling that can afford a home move in and pay what they were paying to mortgage/rent a house toward the parents' care. Then split the remaining $10,000 5 ways, possibly temporarily 4 ways if the youngest sibling is still in school or very new in their career and not just a deadbeat. NTA. Of course, in a marriage, there shouldn't be a mine-yours argument going on, but the fact your wife agreed to pay more, knowing it's coming out of your income, isn't acceptable. It is not your parents. Of the 5 siblings, single-handedly cannot afford it, it is too expensive. I could never imagine paying so much, and I also have 4 siblings. None of us could afford that, single or married. Not your parents, not your problem. Either they find a cheaper option or they divide it equally under the 5 siblings, no spouses. Either they find a cheaper option or they divide it equally under the 5 siblings, no spouses. This is especially true considering the house. The siblings don't want to sell an asset that realistically would provide for their parents' care. If they don't want to use an asset at hand, then it's their responsibility to front the cost to save that asset. The siblings can buy the house, use that money until it's gone, then parents go on assisted living. 2. If brother already lives in the house, they may not have to sell, they can just keep living there. Consult an elderly law attorney. When my great-grandma got to needing this type of care, my grandma and her brother discussed affording it. Grandma makes more than her brother. What they did was let my uncle, grandma's brother's son, move into great-grandma's house. He paid rent, and grandma got all the rent to compensate her, paying a larger share of care. That way it balanced out. They could easily do similar here, but instead the brother is getting a free house and contributing less on OP's dime. He should be getting some kind of compensation to make it more fair. Brother can pay rent, someone else can live in the house and pay rent, they can sell the house, or they can all split it. What happens if OP's parents need similar care and he now can't afford it because they decided to make him pay for their parents? What can the siblings afford with everyone making an equal contribution? That's the nursing home price you need to look at. Do your in-laws have any wealth? House, investment property, savings, pensions? Those resources should be exhausted before anyone pays a penny. If you overpay and your in-laws do have assets when they die, are the siblings going to give you a significantly higher inheritance? I think not. NTA, other people do not get to decide how your family spends its money. Though OP's a bit of an AH for I make more, etc., but I acknowledge she was sorely provoked. Factors that don't seem to be taken into account yet are: does OP have parents? Might they need care? Who pays for that? Cannot afford both. Do OP and her wife have children? How would this financial responsibility impact them? If the cost were split amongst the 5 siblings, how much would they be on the hook for? Is this one of those situations where payment could reasonably be a percentage of salary? E.g., if 5 Kala is, I don't know, 20% of OP's salary, then can the siblings each contribute 20% of their salaries? What assets are the parents bringing to this? What are their pensions? How much would in-home care cost? As much as an assisted living facility? It doesn't sound as if the options had been properly assessed, and as if they'd all jumped to assisted living facility because OP will cover most of it, without thinking things through. Back to the table, folks. Agreed. NTA op. When my grandparents needed to move into an assisted living facility, they sold their house, and that paid for a lot of those expenses. Also, have any of the siblings spoken to their parents about how to pay for all of this? Assuming at least one of them is cognizant, they should also get a say in how all of this is handled. And they might even have had a plan or savings account in place for just this eventuality. Effective immediately, time to separate finances. Get your own bank. She does not have access to. Joint account for all bills. Only transfer enough to joint account to pay for half of all utilities, rent, mortgage, insurance, food, phone, etc. If your wife wants to pay the majority, she can after her half of all bills are paid from her salary. If she does not have enough to eat out on, buy makeup, buy new clothes, vacations, entertainment, or to save for retirement, then that is on her. If she can't afford food, a bag of dried beans and rice are filling and can last an entire week for a single person for less than $10. Money coming in belongs to both you and your wife as a whole. As such, you get a say on what expenses you're willing to have. She can't decide something by herself that will affect both of you financially. Info. Do in-laws have any assets to sell to fund the stay in assisted living? Would in-laws be willing to rewrite their wills to account for the expenditure? YMBTA for comment about what you earn. My husband earns more than me. I could earn as much as him, but I've made several career sacrifices for kids/family so that he didn't have to. So I earn less. So if he pulled this on me, I'd remind him of what I could earn if he provided me the same support. The monthly budget for assisted living should, whatever Medicare will kick in, plus 5x what the least well-off sibling/family can afford to contribute each month. Once that baseline is established, the other siblings can determine how much more per month they contribute to their parents' care to raise the budget. The house will probably need to be sold to help cover the costs of their care. Medicare has a look-back period, so it's best to start liquidating assets now rather than trying to do it later. Wow, this is a barrel of worms. It should have been discussed by the parents and at least semi-arrangements considered. Also by the parents and their children and spouses. They didn't wake up suddenly old. The wife doesn't get to make unilateral financial decisions and decide that her siblings can coast on her husband's income. What about husband's parents? It sounds as if some of the children, other than OP's wife, have spouses. What happens when they need care and what they can afford is already being spent? Also, emergencies happen, long-term illness, etc. If someone needs to cover the needs of their immediate family, newborns, etc., where does that money come from if they all are paying the max they can afford for one spouse's parents? What are the parents covering? They should have some kind of retirement plan, or at least retirement savings, social security, pension, whatever, to help cover some of these costs. If they were living in a house, there would be a profit selling. If renting, what they were using to pay rent without help should be going toward it. If they are destitute, Medicaid should be investigated. This agreement was poorly thought out, and there definitely needs to be more research put in other than finding a wonderful place. Your in-laws are spending your money with zero input from you. My husband works for an assisted living place in upstate NY, and it's $12 per month per person, so yes, it's very possible that he's looking at $25 per month. And this assisted living is a non-profit, so just imagine what some of the for-profit ones charge. This is going to be an ugly conversation, and you shouldn't have yelled, but there is no reason for you to be paying significantly more than the other siblings.